obviously day one, I think most important thing is obviously efficiency to what we're trying to do. Right? I mean, there's a lot of new, and I don't just mean that in new offense. I mean that in people. I mean that in just making sure we understand how we got to do things together. And so I think that day one is always, there's a lot of energy and things like that, but I think we're a little bit further along than, not saying plan, but further along of, I've really kind of spent a lot of time in football the last month and a half, 2 months, with just some walkthroughs and things that we hadn't normally done. And I thought it was really important for us for many reasons, obviously from what we missed out of at the end of the season, but also with all the new guys and the new coaches and things like that. So there's a lot of things we got to correct up from day one. But I think that if you're around, you can see that there's a lot more in. There's a lot more to what we've done, and I give these guys a lot of credit. They've put a lot of work in the last 2 months, not just training and things like that, but doing a lot of football, and that's going to be real important to us.
How does that kind of impact? You talk about all the new faces, and you've been through this. In this era, how's it impacted the way you handle spring practice when you have so many more new people?
I don't know. At first, I kind of thought, about 2.5 months ago, and we're trying to plan for looking ahead at spring ball, and it's like, okay, we got a lot of older guys too, right? We got the Riley Mullmans and the Jake Renfros, and a lot of guys that played a lot of ball and played a lot of snaps. So you're like, okay, we don't know how many snaps are those guys going to get in spring football. Then you look at it, you say, well, you got a new quarterback, you got a new system. I mean, our ones are going to need a ton of snaps. Everybody needs a ton of snaps, but there's going to have to be a balance. So I think in the first 4 days, you'll see us do as much with that first group and guys that had played a lot of ball as we ever have. But I think as you see the second half of spring, you'll see more 1As and 1Bs where, okay, some of those guys that have played a lot of football, maybe they don't get 30 reps of team during a practice, but they get in 15. But those guys that are the 1B, so we're able to kind of do that. But I don't think you can take a step back and say we're the NFL and we're not going to have a spring practice and we're going to play flag football, or we're going to play touch, or we're going to, sit a bunch of our guys out. That's not going to be the philosophy of what our program is, and I don't think that's going to be the philosophy that's going to put us in the right direction.
What kind of things did you do the last month and a half or two to be further along, specifically offensively when you're implementing a new?
Well, I mean, obviously everybody can have meetings, but you're allotted those 2 hours, and in the past, January and February for me had been much more of, hey, don't mess. Let these guys train. You get them in the weight room. Let them train. Let us use all of our time as much as we can training-wise. And then coaches would start to take the guys out in the field and do some fundamental work, which to me can be the more taxing thing. We use the max that we could use in really just meeting and then legitimately walking through. We didn't do as much of the fundamental work onto the field. It was kind of done through the weight room in their training and in their speed work. But just spent a lot more time in the classroom teaching football, studying the history of Wisconsin football. We had to do a better job, and we had to do a better job of making sure we knew where we came from to where we're headed. So it was twofold. It was, there's a little bit of history of some of that stuff, but also really spending time understanding what football 101, 102, and 103 really looks like, whether that's a young guy that's just walking the program, a fifth-year transfer guy that has 1 year, or, guys that have been here for a long time. I think there was a lot to be gained.
How do you go about teaching history? Did you bring former players in, or like what?
No, we just went back and make sure that all the stuff that we walk around and see on a daily basis, that we know exactly what it is, right? And I don't know that that's going to tell you that that's going to help it lead to winning football games, but I truly believe it helps building a program and making sure we understand a culture of what has been here and what needs to continue to be here. And so it was more so of some of that, of just making sure we all understand the legacies that were behind us and the what we have to uphold moving forward. And then we would test them and have some fun with it. And anytime you're testing people and things like that, and you're posting, what it looks like, I think you kind of recognize how important it is to not just to one person, but to everybody.
Finishing games and finishing, in those games, it's been such a focus for you guys. Like, how have you gone about that this year? Since it hasn't maybe.
Well, we haven't. It's only been 1 day, so it's an emphasis, but it's like the same thing. It's just because you emphasize it doesn't mean it's going to happen. So we've emphasized it for a while now, and it just has not been something that's been as obviously where we need to be. And we'll continue to do it, but I think that has more to do with just an environment, and a culture, and a nature of what it is that you do. And I think in the big picture of things, and some of the things we got to do different, philosophy-wise, more so than just how you train, that's going to give you a better chance to be your best not only at the end of the year, but in the end of those situational, especially games.
You talked about the importance of getting bigger, defensive line, linebacker, some of those spots. But do you think you also have some more versatility and the ability to do some more things with the number of bodies and guys you have?
We'll see. Time will tell. I do believe so, but like I said, keeping you guys so you can watch and see what you see, and I'll try to keep my mouth shut because I think we got to prove a lot of different things. And so whether, yes, there is some different size and there's some different length and even weights and things like that, what we got to do is we got to be able to produce and make sure that it's used in the way which gives us the opportunity to be successful and win football games. And so that's the philosophy, and now we got to implement it.
Nazir's kind of in a tough position where he's.
Why is that?
Well, he's got that hearing in May later.
He's playing.
Okay.
So I mean, I don't know why would there be any tough
There's a
situation.
limbo. He could be ruled.
No, he's not going to be. So I don't know why it would cause him any limbo. It's kind of that same thing. People tell you today it's harder to build teams and programs and cultures because of the nature of college football. I think that's just an excuse. Right? It's the same thing. Why would you put anything in your head that would keep you from doing everything that you need to do here and how you're going to grow to move forward? And so I don't think that there's anything that is going to hold him back or should be in his mind of any sorts. We're moving forward 100%, and that's what we believe.
He's been handling it pretty well, and just.
He's a very mature kid, and I think that the initial part of it was the tough situation, but ever since then, I think that he knows what he needs to do, and he knows we're going to get it done.
There have been some springs or some falls where there's 6, 7, maybe more running backs in a room. Obviously, it's not as big numbers this year, but what's your approach to spring ball and handling and evaluating, especially during?
Just moved a guy over there yesterday to make sure we can have enough guys in that room that give us the opportunity to be able to practice, because just like any position, right, the running back is one of those spots, and the offensive line is the other one that, I mean, last year in spring ball, we had to scour campus to find a couple more guys so that we can make sure we could, have at least 2 groups out there as the offensive line, and so running back's a little bit of that similar situation. I think it's really great quality within that room, but the depth isn't there's not a ton, and that's one of those things that if and when you have to trim these things down to 105, those are going to be some of those areas and issues that are going to be very difficult that we understand, but I don't know that everybody outside that thinks that that's the best thing for you kind of understand. There's some of those spots and those situations that make it harder to prepare if you're not healthy, but also have a good balance to what you're doing.
You mentioned the 105, but there's 106 players on the spring roster. Has that influenced just how you have to?
I don't think it's fair to do that. I mean, again, is the world we live in, I don't expect it to change, but the world we live in, how things change pretty regularly. Until we get to the point where we legitimately know there's a cut down date and it's in writing and it's printed, then obviously we'll have to do what we need to do to make sure we're in compliance with that. But it's too hard right now. It's too hard on everybody else around it, even kids and things. So time will tell. But we got a plan, but let's wait till we have to execute it.
What do you like about Jackson Akers' ability to play some tight end and do some different things, because he played multiple positions here in his career?
I mean, if there's a guy that I think in the last 2 years that has grown, in my mind, incredible amounts is him. And that's not just as a football player, I just mean as a leader, a guy that's, the toughness side of things, that he's one of those guys I think that is in a position to have an incredible year. And versatility is but I think that a lot of the things that we're doing have a better chance for him to be put in a position where he can highlight the things that give him the greatest chance, not only to help us, but also to have a future in this game.
Billy, what did you see that made him be a fit for this new system, and what's the approach you see from him heading into spring practice?
Again, those are short stints of things, but obviously you study them first before you have any idea of who people really are, and it's easy to pop on the film and watch and things like that. So knew that I believed that what we seen, he was a ball player. And then as you got a chance to visit with him and spend a little bit of time with him, you recognize the maturity, you recognize the passion and the love for the game. And I think that's, to me, and that in all positions, but in particular in that position, is really critical. Walking in, understanding what's in front of him, meaning where we are and where we need to get to, understanding what that run is going to look like as far as the schedule and things like that. And a guy that never batted his eye at it, and to me that told me a lot about him as a person. Now, obviously, we're still seeing a lot more about him as a player, but everything from the get-go, as a leader, as a guy that understands the maturity and what it takes and what it looks like to be a pro, he's been an incredible example since he's walked in the door.
It was the first spring practice opportunity ever for some of these early enrollees. What does it take to get them mentally, physically prepared to see them?
Like I said, the last 2 months has I think helped those guys, but they would probably, if you talked to them, it was a lot different today. I mean, just when legitimately bullets are kind of flying, they're not even in pads yet, things happen a lot faster. But I think they're in a pretty good place. I mean, they're going to get plenty of opportunities and plenty of reps. Day one is not usually the most difficult. Yes, there's a little bit of anxiety and a little bit of nerves involved with it. It's when things start to add up. It's day 2, day 3, day 4 that the accumulation of things can start to slow a lot of guys down mentally. And for us, and more than anything, we want to figure out if a guy's going to play as a freshman, he cannot be slowed down mentally. Even if he's not positive, not sure, not exact on what he is doing, the guys that have an opportunity to play through that and still play fast have a much better chance to play as young guys, and those guys that can't and don't, they eventually will. Those are the ones that it really kind of builds up and adds on, and sometimes by mid to late spring, in some ways are struggling a bit more, but nonetheless, I think that the last 2 months has given those guys an opportunity to be a lot further along than most early enrollee freshmen.
How much Tretch improved both on and off the field?
I don't know. We'll find out. It's one day. It's really hard to say. I know this, that every year, a guy like him who's got an incredible competitive spirit, his ability to mature, his ability to understand not just the offense but the game is where he has continued to grow. And I think that'll show, but again, it's day one. It's shown in the classroom. It's shown in some of the off-the-field things about taking care of your body and developing your body. And it'll eventually continue to show more on the field, but I think that was a challenge to him as a young guy that has an incredible competitive spirit, has an incredible, skill set and talent level, to how does he still be able to raise the game, and there's some things that we'll see this spring, and we'll see, obviously through the summer and the fall.
I'd say with that spring showcase that's coming up next month, just what does it mean to get the fans back in to the stadium to see the team, but also how do you, with all the talk about spring football too and games and competition, maybe others trying to look at the portal, like is there any reconciliation you have to do between what you're trying to show the fans and what you're trying to put on?
We don't tell everything like a lot of others that want to announce things that they've that's had this epiphany that they're not going to do things. For 3 months we've said that, hey, if the Big Ten's going to come to us and say they want to put it on TV, that's not going to be what we're going to do. But for us to, be worried about something else but not be able to get out of it what we need to get out of it, I think it would be short-sighted on our part. So I think it's a great opportunity. We missed out last year on the ability for these guys after 14 or 13 practices. I think we had 12 practices before our spring scrimmage, to not have a little something that brings a different energy with some fans and in the stadium that I didn't want to lose out on. It'll be another opportunity for us to, obviously compete. I think that's what we got to continue to do and need. And if we had to take measures by putting guys in jerseys with no numbers and things like that because we were worried about something, we would take those measures, but we're not going to take them and miss the opportunity for us to truly compete and find out a little bit more about what we got.
Anything else for coaching, guys?
Good.
We
All right.
talk about setting the roots of a program and establishing a program, and spend a lot of time talking about what year 1, 2, and 3 look like. But it's not just you, but it's a lot of these guys that have been here for all 3 years. So a guy like Malman, a guy like, you look at defense, you talk about Jackson Ager. Like, how do they impact things when you're talking about recruits and transfers coming in?
There's a piece of this thing called loyalty that can be lost in today's, not just football world, but in a lot of today's societies. And for those guys to be the core and the crux of your program is going to be really, really important to us. And to see those guys buy in and believe in the things that, haven't been able to be seen because there's a lot of things that happen within a program that from the outside you don't get a chance to see. It doesn't show up on Saturday. You see the periphery of things that maybe change, but the deep roots of the program are what those guys have stood for, and that's what's going to continue to give us the opportunity to get back to where we need to get to and where this place has been in the last few years. So they're not only a huge part of it, but they will be a huge part of the future, when they're not even here, right? I mean, in a year when those guys graduate, they'll have had a greater impact than probably anybody understands and knows. Thanks.
Thanks.